In with something we were talking about in our Christian discussion this morning before worship. The lecture had to do with the passage about who do you say I am, when Jesus is asking the question of his followers. It isn't important what others say about me. It is, who do you say that I am? And this sentence, keep on doing the things that you have learned and received and heard and seen in me, and the God of peace will be with you. And we talked about the disciple of Christ theology, that we see God through Jesus Christ as disciples. He is our visual part of seeing God. And St. Paul writes very positively about what God and Christ and our belief have together for all of us. And I titled the sermon today, Come Ahead. God is smiling. Because God is with us. And He's smiling. And He's waiting for us. And He's smiling. And I thought afterwards, we have 4 new posters to put on the wall that are characters of Jesus. And they are characteristic of a very smiling, happy, loving Jesus. And I think that's so typical of how we think of Jesus as disciples. And it does not give any kind of an attitude about shamey on you. It's the love of Christ that we feel. So come ahead. God is smiling. There was an elderly lady who entered a pet store, and she wanted to purchase a parrot. And the store manager did have a parrot, but he warned the lady that his parrot was kind of a bad parrot. It had been raised by a sailor. And I don't know why sailors always get the tag about using the bad language, but they do. And this parrot picked up on this sailor's bad language. And the pet store manager, there was nothing he could do about it other than tell the person who was going to buy it. But the lady thought she could correct the defective use of language. So, arriving home, she put this parrot in a brand new gilded cage. It was really great. And as soon as the parrot got in the cage, it started uttering unbelievable language. And immediately the lady removed the parrot from the cage and put it in the refrigerator. 5 minutes she left that bird in the refrigerator. And she brought it out and she says, now what do you have to say? Well, the poor bird's feathers were shaking and the teeth were rattling, but he launched into another shocking barrage of bad language. Determined, the little old lady grabbed the parrot again. Back to the refrigerator it went, for 10 minutes this time. She brought it out, and she said, once again, what do you say? Are you going to curse again? And the silly bird, though he was shivering mightily, he let loose a barrage of even worse language. So she grabbed him again. Back to the freezer he went again. She left him in there for 15 minutes. Now I'm talking about the freezer. She left him in. And she pulled him out just in the nick of time. And she asked him one more time, "Are you going to curse again?" Poor bird was blue in color. His feathers were frozen stiff. There was an icicle hanging down from his beak. And the parrot replied to her, "No, no, 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 ma'am. But would you please tell me, what was it that turkey said to get put in there?" You know, it's getting close to Thanksgiving. And thinking about that, talking about that turkey makes me realize how really close we are to Thanksgiving. It makes me aware that there is a growing tendency to call Thanksgiving Turkey Day rather than Thanksgiving. And I wonder maybe if that is typical of our society today, where we're backing off of talking about certain holidays having a holy significance, and we want to make them just simply secular days totally. You know, we need to spend more time, I think, giving thanks to God for His blessings. We need to spend more time and more effort in developing attitudes of gratitude, being thankful more to God. There are some figures that claim that in America we lose as much change each year as the rest of the world has to live on. Think about that. You and I lose as much money in loose change each year as most of the people around the world have to live on. By the way, if you have found mine, I'd gladly take it back. See, the total average income that you and I lose in loose change a year is $75. The average income per person for people around the world is $69. So you know, I point that out to point out why we have so much to be grateful for, that we have so much for which we should give thanks to God, and to realize how well off we really are. But yet, unfortunately, so many people, rather than giving thanks to God, rather than realizing how grateful they should be for what they have, whine, complain, and act as if somehow life has mistreated us. You see, we need to be grateful for all that we have. And maybe at the same time, even be grateful for what we don't have. There are many problems that we could have that you and I don't have, for which we need to be grateful. We can be just as blessed by many of the things that have not happened in our lives as we can by those things we have. We need to focus on Paul's attitude. He has an attitude of continual thanksgiving. He writes, "Rejoice in the Lord. Rejoice always. Again I say," he says, "rejoice." You see, St. Paul has an upbeat attitude that could destroy even though he experienced shipwrecks, beatings, imprisonment, unfair criticism, and a host of other trials, he never let any of those things affect his attitude. What do you suppose his secret was? How could he keep so calm and so thankful in view of all of the trials and tribulations that he had to go through in life? Well, it was his attitude. It was a positive attitude. An attitude of gratitude. And one of the things that helped him develop that attitude of gratitude is that he sincerely believed in prayer. He writes, "Have no anxiety about anything, but everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your request be made known by God." It seems that many people go through the motions of praying. One of our themes as the disciples of Christ over the last few years has been, teach us to pray. It was listed as the one that we have now is broken, but we had it on this year's chalice, teach us to pray. Meaning, help us to be sincere in our prayers and for our prayers to have real meaning. Dick Van Dyke once told a story of a little boy who was dining with his parents in the home of an elderly man. After watching the old man bow his head and look down towards his plate, the little boy asked his mother, what did Mr. Bryan say to his plate? Well, you see, for many people, prayer at the meal doesn't have any real meaning other than praying to the plate. It's a ritual. It's a mindless act, a conditioned response. We pray at meals. For some, prayer is a way of manipulating God. We ask God to do little favors and everything, and I found that didn't work yesterday. I asked him for TCU to win. But you know, some of us do ask some of those silly kind of prayers. We may be sincere in them, but they're kind of silly, but they're kind of natural to us. There's a lady who works as a clerk in a bank, and she tells about one lady who came in to see her, and she was ecstatic. She wanted to change her checks. And she said, "Honey, I don't need those praying checks or the praying hands on my checks anymore. I ordered them when I was looking for a husband after my dear husband Albert died, and now I found him. So I don't need those praying hands anymore. Give me some checks with some flowers and butterflies on them." You see, for some people, saying prayers is just kind of like getting favors from God. That misses the whole point of communication with God through prayer. Authentic prayer is born out of a deep relationship with the Creator. It's a dynamic, two-way flow of communication between our heart and God's heart. It is not merely a ritual that we go through or a cheap means of getting what we want. It means that by our presence and our presence with God, we stay in communication with one another. It is a means by which we not only make our requests from Him, but He also makes His requests known to us. St. Paul understood that kind of a prayer. He was connected to the source of all power, all love. St. Paul had an attitude of gratitude. First of all, because he believed in prayer. But you see, he also focused on the positive in life. Listen to these words from our scriptures this morning. Finally, brethren, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is gracious, if there is any excellence, if there is any worthy of praise, think about these things. In other words, focus on the positive in life. You know, the press made fun of Ronald Reagan while he was sitting in the White House watching The Sound of Music. But wouldn't you like to age as gracefully as did our former president? Maybe we need to pay attention to some more uplifting movies. Maybe we need to read some uplifting books. Listen to some uplifting music. Whatever is true, says St. Paul, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is gracious, if there is any excellence, if there is anything that is worthy of praise, think about these things. See, that's pretty darn good advice. St. Paul had an attitude of gratitude because he believed in prayer and because he focused on the positive. And there's one other thing about St. Paul. St. Paul trusted that whatever happened, God was with him. He writes, I know how to be abased and I know how to abound. In any and all circumstance, I have learned the lesson, learned the secret of facing plenty and hunger, abundance and want. I can do all things through him who strengthens me. St. Paul knew whatever it was that life sent by him, he would be able to cope. Why? Because he was not alone. I want to tell you about an interesting scientific study. A 12-month-old infant child is sitting on a glass table. His mother stands at the other end, approximately 10 feet away, and beside her is an attractive toy Ferris wheel. And directly under the glass of the table is a red and white checkered cloth. And the lighting is controlled in such a manner that the glass is invisible. So the baby has the feeling that the cloth is solid ground. Halfway between the mother and the end of the table, the checkered cloth beneath the glass drops drastically. So it gives the impression of being a cliff. The cloth goes up to a point and then it drops off as an illusion. The glass surface on which the baby sits stays the same way all the way through. And as the baby crawls closer to the halfway point, as he's going towards the mother and the Ferris wheel, he comes literally to the edge of the cliff And he looks down, and he's uncertain. On the one hand, he's scared, a natural fear of height and of falling. On the other hand, he wants to get to the mother and to that pretty toy that she has. Unable to resolve his ambivalence and his uncertainty, the baby looks at his mother's face, looking for some emotional feeling and direction from her face. The baby watchers who did this experiment call this social referencing. And when the baby doesn't know what to do, he looks at the mother and he takes his cue from her. If the mother had been instructed to show fear on her face, the baby will not cross the cliff. And in fact, he will retreat and become upset. But if the mother gives a nice smile, conveying the message, you're okay, you're doing fine, honey, the baby will crawl to her, crawling so that he would, in essence, go over the cliff to get to his mother. What a beautiful analogy of the life of faith. St. Paul could see in his heart his heavenly parent's face. He knew God was smiling at him, telling him, move forward, you're okay, you're doing fine. And he did move, knowing that God was with him. See, no wonder St. Paul could rejoice. Prayer was something that was very real to him. He kept his eyes focused on those things that are positive. And he trusted. He trusted that he could do all things through Christ who strengthened him. That's a good formula for you and for me, to always know that we can trust Christ and that we can do all things through Christ who strengthens us. Let God's people celebrate true thanksgiving, true gratitude every day. Amen.